Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video on a Nishane, which is a house you will be hearing more about. There are more Nishanes to come on the channel, but you know what? These late night insight videos are really meant for this exact type of fragrance, a fragrance that I've had a chance to test 3 or 4 times, wear it to bed. Never worn it as my scent of the day, but I have pretty good amount of experience with this where I feel comfortable at least discussing my initial thoughts, right? And I'll probably never own a bottle unless someone just gives me a bottle or something. This is not something I'd go spend my own money on, although I really do appreciate the scent. And it's like no other Nishane because Nishanes are known to be kind of heavy and thick and some people say that they are kind of overbearing, that they kind of weigh you down. They're very heavy scents, and I actually like Nishane as a house, but this is one that does the exact opposite. This is almost like a summer Nishane, okay? And it's called Wulong Cha, okay? So the name is basically made up of two names put together. Oolong is kind of a type of tea, which we'll discuss, and cha or chai is kind of a Hindi word for tea, okay? So they're talking about a tea scent. But there's so much more going on here, which we'll discuss. And I do have to give a special shout out to Senator Eddie, who very kindly, I believe it was Eddie who sent me this decant Longo. This is an old decant. And you can see this comes from indiesense.com. And I've been sitting on this for a long time. I've probably worn it to bed 3 or 4 times, as I've said. So let me read you the description from the Nishane website. It says, as one of the strongest fresh scents in the market, it opens on citrus notes of bergamot, orange, and mandarin that provide the sparkling freshness, while Mediterranean fig and musk provide a base for the fragrance. Oolong tea mesmerizes in an evasive way. Okay, very interesting. So Nishane does 15 ml bottles, which I like, for $95. They do 50 ml bottles for $220, or they do the big boy, the 100 mls, for $335. So this opens up as one of the freshest Nishane fragrances to my nose, hands down. It is zesty, zingy, fresh, tangy, whatever you want to call it. There is almost this citrus kind of melange, this dance of citruses on your skin that kind of hits very early on, and it's made up of bergamot, mandarin orange, and orange. Okay, so those are the three big citruses that hit, okay? And there's also a note in here that very early on my nose picks up as what I would call, I don't know how to describe it any other way than just to call it an unscented lotion type smell, okay? So unscented lotion has a certain scent to me, or a certain feeling, a smell when you put on unscented lotion. And this scent has that. Now, this is an extrait de parfum, so even though it's a fresh fragrance, it's a summer freshie is how I would describe this, it's still an extrait. So it really does last a long time on your skin, okay? But the tea note comes much later on. But early on, this is not like a big bold statement maker like Fan Your Flames or something like that, which I'm going to review Fan Your Flames on the channel still, but some of the other Nishanes are much bigger and bolder. This is also not the first tea scent that comes to mind for me. There are other tea scents which we're going to highlight on the channel very soon. This will be maybe the summer of tea for Ram, but 5 o'clock Eau Gingembre is my #1 all-time favorite tea scent. I will review this soon on the channel. I absolutely love this stuff. And also, there's another tea scent from the house of Masque Milano called Russian Tea, which we will be discussing on the channel very soon as well. Both of them are amazing, but this is kind of very interesting, at least equally interesting in its own right. I prefer the two, the Serge Lutens and the Masque Milano, but I have to give Nishane its props for putting something like this out. It is very interesting and very unlike anything that I've smelled from Nishane. This kind of continues on a path of positive Nishane reviews for me. And so the top notes are filled with citruses, as I said. Very fresh, very vibrant. The bergamot is sparkling, translucent, slightly metallic almost. The mandarin orange and orange add just a little bit of sweetness. Not too much, though. I mean, sweet in the citrusy sense, if you will. And the very interesting note of Litsea cubiba, which if you are a regular watcher of Channel Ram, you know that Roja Dove loves using, let's say, a Kubiba. I've talked about it on many of his sort of fresher reviews. Things like Herod's Porom has it, Oceania has it. And you know, if you've watched my channel for a while, you know exactly what that is. But it's sort of a shrub from Asia that is meant to mimic the smell of citruses later into the dry down. So citruses are usually very volatile notes that fly off of your skin very quickly, right? The Lycea cubiba note is meant to make you feel like you're smelling citruses long after the citruses actually evaporated off your skin, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of a sleight of hand trick by the perfumer, but that's what perfumery is all about, making you smell something that maybe isn't even there. Some of the best perfumers get the biggest kick out of making a fragrance that, for example, smells like a note that isn't even in the fragrance. When I reviewed Papillon's Tobacco Rose, it was very interesting to me that there was no tobacco in there. It was a hay note that she ended up using. Go watch my review of Tobacco Rose if you want to learn a little bit more about that. But it basically extends the life of the citruses, this, let's say, a Kubiba note, okay? And I think it's the first Nishane I've come across that actually has used this note. Now, the perfumer is Jorge Lee. Jorge Lee is a very underrated perfumer. I think he's done a lot of the Nishanes. I don't know if all of them, but he's done a lot of them, okay? And so he's a perfumer that has done some good and he's done some bad, okay? But basically with Wulong Cha, this is 10 years old. This is already a decade old, which is crazy. There is a X version of all of these Nishanes, not all of them, but a lot of them that have like an oud note. And I've never smelled any of the X's, but I figure that they're very similar to what Masque Milano did. A little bit of a cash grab is what it feels like to me. But I would definitely say that the opening of the original Oolong Cha from 2014 is a fresh, citrusy summer fragrance. Very citrus heavy, very interesting. But what ends up happening slowly but surely is that unscented lotion smell almost feels like on my skin. It starts to morph into this tea-like smell. But before that happens, you notice a little bit of greenery come in. And I'm not sure that green note is interesting because all that's listed is bergamot, mandarin orange, and let's say a kubiba, okay? So my guess is maybe it's actually the oolong cha tea that goes through a little bit of a transition on my skin as it goes on, because early on it smells slightly green, but there's no green notes listed in here that I can point to. There's no galbanum, there's no there's no green notes per se that you could point to. There's no artemisia or anything like that in the opening. But it definitely feels like there's something slightly green that ends up coming through, like you're almost like you're smelling a green tea. Okay, there is no green tea in here. It's oolong tea, but imagine you are smelling a little bit of a green tea in the opening, and slowly that lotion greenness starts to turn into this tea-like smell of oolong tea, which is a very special type of tea. And oolong tea is special because they actually leave it out in the sun to some say ferment, some say oxidize, whatever you want to use the word. There's this oxidation process that ends up taking place, and depending on how long they allow it to oxidize, can really vary the smell and taste of the tea wildly, okay, between different regions. So it's big in different parts of Asia. Apparently it's big in Thailand, Japan, China, all that good stuff, right? And so I think China is where it originated from, if I'm not mistaken. But apparently the smell can vary wildly, okay, depending on how the oxidation, how long it's left out, and all that good stuff, okay, and which region it's from, and all that good stuff. So, but to my nose, what ends up happening is this lotion-like smell behind the citruses slowly starts to give way. And what ends up kind of taking its place, what ends up filling that void, is the tea note. So the tea note kind of just I would say it like, moseys its way into the scent very, very slowly. It feels like maybe there's a little bit of that green tea note in the top, but the actual main star of the show almost feels a little bit like an afterthought to the scent. It just kind of starts to come onto the scene, and once it joins the party, it feels almost more fresh, more like green and fresh than it does anything else. The nutmeg adds a little bit of spiciness, which I've always said kind of keeps everything in bounds. It keeps almost like keeping the tea in the tea bag, right? The nutmeg adds a little bit of that with the spiciness, but slowly but surely. And like I said, this is a pretty long fragrance for a scent that is a citrusy, freshy, if you will. But what ends up happening, at least to my nose, is that the deeper notes slowly start to appear the longer into the dry down that you go. Okay, so sort of the honeyed fruit-like notes begin to appear after the fresher green side of the tea appears. And then after the honeyed, fruity side of the tea, you start to get the charred, burned, woody aspects later into the dry down. Okay, so that's kind of the progression of the scent, if you will. And the heavier aspects of this tea note start to show up later. So if you smell it and you go, "Where's the tea?" Give it time. You know, it will appear, but you've got to wait. Sometimes you have to wait hours. And sometimes I've given up and gone to bed and haven't really got very much from the tea. Today I've got a 2.5 hour dry down in, and I'm definitely getting the darker, woodier, definitely the woodier aspects of the tea, which is very interesting. I think it's a very interesting creation. And there's even into the heart of the fragrance, there's even these slightly floral hints, if you will, that start to make an appearance. My guess would be, and again, this is just a guess, my guess would be that this note listing is incomplete, that there's probably more to it. Maybe there's a green note in the top that is not listed, and maybe there's a floral note or two in the base that, or in the heart, that are not listed. My guess would be something like rose, some type of rose, God knows what type. Some type of rose or geranium or something like that is in the heart, giving it this floral lift. You know, it gives it this contrast, if you will. And I think, my personal opinion, this is a completely unisex fragrance, but I think this would smell amazing on a woman, on a strong, you know, confident woman wearing this. It would be a knockout, especially in the heat. So to my nose, there are some notes that sort of play like tag team with the fragrance, if you will. Okay, so one is the tea starts to give off this almost like fruity apricot, like dried fruit like feel. Like imagine like dried fruits in tea with fruity apricots, and the sort of fruity fig work together. So the fruity side of the tea, and there's a Mediterranean fig note in the base that starts to kind of work together. Now, the greenness actually, now that I'm thinking about it, may come from the fig, because sometimes there is fig leaf that's used and there's fig itself. This feels like fig, but it feels like you're smelling like a green take on, like a very ripe fig, okay? Like a fig that is very fresh off the vine, okay? And so the fruity side of the tea and the Mediterranean fig kind of work in tandem, if you will, okay? And the suntan lotion smell, which I haven't called it suntan lotion yet. In the review, I just said this unscented lotion, but it does start to give off, you know, this fragrance gives off the appearance of fun in the sun and summer. And, you know, I just imagine playing volleyball on the beach, and it's that kind of vibe, right? So suntan lotion obviously popped into my head as I was thinking about this weird unscented lotion note that kept coming and going in and out of the scent. But the lotion smell starts to kind of work with the musk. And so the lotion, and it may actually be the musk that you're smelling from the beginning, for all I know, but there is this muskiness which mixes with the lotion, and it starts to turn into this cleaner sort of white musk-like smell. Okay, so more traditional white musk smell as it dries down. Early on, you get a lot of that unscented lotion. Later on, it almost feels like the unscented lotion has like dried on your skin, because it's been there for 8 hours. You know, you're long, maybe you're sitting by like a campfire drinking a beer or something, the sun is down, and but the suntan lotion is still on you because you haven't showered, right? And it's turning into that powdery white musk. That's kind of the progression. So those two combinations of notes feel like they kind of work in tandem with the fragrance. They tag team in and out, in and out. And then, so as the fragrance dries, the deeper, more richer aspects of the tea kind of come out from the camouflage. Okay, so early on it almost feels like they're camouflaged in a way where the tea just feels like it's giving off these very clean, very crisp, almost thirst quenching aspect of the tea, you know? Like, you know how hot tea, you're supposed to sip it, you're not just going to chug hot tea, right? But sometimes when you're really thirsty, tea can give you that thirst quenching aspect, and you try to drink more than you should of hot tea, right? But imagine there is this crisp aspect. It's like sometimes it feels like a hot tea fragrance, sometimes it feels like an iced tea fragrance. Like that green tea note in the top I was talking about definitely can feel like an iced green tea feeling. But the oolong cha or the oolong tea gives off this warm tea like feel to me for some reason. So different aspects are highlighted here, but definitely this thirst quenching aspect is very interesting. And the tangy aspects of the citrus begin to kind of slowly start to lose themselves as the fragrance dries down. So it's almost like the citruses were steeped in the tea, right? So the citruses were steeped in the tea and they kind of lost the tangier aspects of themselves. And my guess is that is the point where the citrus notes themselves, being so volatile, have kind of flown off your skin. And now you're smelling really that, let's say, a Kubiba note, which is imitating the citruses, okay, as it's kind of dried down. They still seem the citruses still seem to kind of add themselves to the composition as the hours go by. They never really disappear, but they seem to change a little bit, and that's the moment where I really feel like, okay, now you're really getting that, let's say, a Kubiba into the dry down. So the fruit note is another shapeshifter in this. So sometimes it's the very ripe fig, and sometimes it is. I've heard people refer to this lychee-like smell in here, and lychee is a note that I really like. It's in a couple fragrances which I will be reviewing on the channel hopefully soon, hopefully within the next year. One is Frederic Mall's The Moon, and the other is Zonka by L'Artisan Parfumeur. They both use a beautiful lychee note, and I can see a few hours into the fragrance, definitely it gives it almost that, that lychee feel, if you will. But I don't think it's a primary enough note where they decided to list it as a note listing, because it's not actually in the note listing. But I have had some people mention, some folks that I trust, that the fruity note is actually a little bit of a shapeshifter in this one. Okay, so you can see it has layers to it. This is a fairly complex scent. Even though it's a summer freshie, if you will, you kind of have to give Nishane its credit. And then finally, into the dry down, what ends up happening is the heavier, smokier aspects and definitely the woodier aspects of the tea start to kind of make themselves known, okay? So the woodier aspects of the tea start to show themselves into the dry down. The suntan lotion, which now is seemed to be like caked onto your skin at this point, sits on this bed of white musk, and it becomes slightly powdery musk for all, and it just kind of, the white musk is the bed that everything kind of sits on, and it's a very interesting fragrance, I will tell you that. Would I buy it? No. No, I wouldn't buy this. I wouldn't spend my own money on this. Not at the point I am in my journey, you know. If I was someone that had 10 bottles and I didn't have a summer freshie like this to wear, potentially. But, for me, this is one of the fragrances now where it's like, thank you. I'm very glad I got to smell it and do the video and talk about it for you guys. But not something I would go run out and buy. I'd probably wear some of my other tea fragrances I so much love. But yeah, it's a Nishane unlike any Nishane I've come across so far. It's kind of unique. I've never smelled a fresh Nishane yet. All the Nishanes I've smelled are heavy. Even the newest Nishane I added to the collection, Spice Bazaar, that's a heavy, spicy fragrance. And so I'll be talking about Spice Bazaar. I'll be talking about Fan Your Flame. So more Nishane reviews to come. But this is one that I figured, you know what? It's time that I at least do a late night insight video. If you guys have experience with Wūlóng Cha by the House of Nishane from 2014, I would love to know your thoughts. As always, leave a comment. I do respond personally to every single message still. We're still small enough where I can do that. So to those of you who watch, comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff, it is very much appreciated. So as always, hope everyone has a great night. Cheers, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.